In our earlier class for standard ninth physics, we had seen we had started with the laws of motion, the Newton's laws of motion. We already studied the different kinds of forces, the contact forces and non-contact forces, and then we studied the first law of motion, which was related to inertia. So the first law of motion, it gave us the qualitative nature of the force. So that force, so we define force in that particular thing, that force is that physical quantity, that external quantity, which is an external cause, which is going to change the state of inertia of a body. So that's how we defined force in the first law of motion. In the second law of motion, we are going to see the quantity of force. That means we are going to quantify the force, or in other words, we are going to find out that how can we measure the force which is applied. So that is the first law of the motion, is telling you about the quality of force, and the second law tells you about the quantity of force. Now, before we start with the second law of motion, we need to learn, or we need to understand one more physical quantity, and that physical quantity is called as momentum. Okay, it's linear momentum. Let's take an example before we understand this thing. Suppose I am standing and a very small kid, maybe 5 years or 6 years of age, who is cycling, okay, so we can understand how fast he could be traveling, very slow, and he will be hardly pedaling in a proper manner that he could go that fast. Suppose I want to stop that particular boy, it would be very simple for me. I could just stand in front of him, and as soon as he comes, I can just block him. Why would that be? Because his mass is very very less. 5 साल के बच्चे का क्या mass रहेगा? So right, mass will be very less, and the speed with which he is traveling is going to be also less. Now let's say we take a condition that instead of that 5-year boy, it's a 15-year-old boy. Means any one of you is traveling on a cycle and coming as fast as possible you can, and you're coming towards me. Can I in any way try to stop you? No, I will have to get side, but I cannot stop you. Because for stopping you, एक तो सबसे पहले your mass is quite good enough, right? And your velocity is also large. So because of the speed, that is velocity, and the mass both being higher, it is difficult for me to stop that particular cycle coming from front from me. So we see that an object which is lighter in weight and one which has got a lesser velocity can be stopped easily. If the same body, suppose the weight is less but the velocity is greater, it will be slightly difficult to stop it, but still manageable. But if the weight is also more and the speed is also more, then it is very dangerous to stop that thing. So there, the amount of work required, or the amount of physical force required to stop it, will be very 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 high. So we see that the factor which was dependent, or the factors which are dependent on how do I stop the moving object, will be on two things. One is the mass and other is the velocity. Okay, so if we see two objects, same mass, one coming with a higher speed, one coming with a lower speed, then the one coming with a lower speed can be stopped easily, okay, but one coming with a higher speed will be difficult to stop, right? Like दोनों सेम कार है, but एक कार is moving at a speed of just 20 kilometers per hour, so not too fast. So when it's coming in front of me, the damage it could cause to any particular person will be less, whereas one which is coming at 80 kilometers per hour, then definitely the damage it could cause to itself and others would be very high. Other way around, if the mass is not same, like one is a car and another is a truck, and if the car is moving at a higher speed, but the truck is not moving at a higher speed, okay, then what will happen is that, okay, initially let us take both of them to be at same speed. In that case, stopping the car will be easier, or the damage caused by the car will be less as compared to the damage caused by the truck, because truck has got velocity as well as mass. Got it? So, and the truck, if it is going at a high speed, then finish. Nobody can stop it. It is going to cause a destruction. So, you can see that the whole process had two physical quantities very, very important. One, the mass, and other, the velocity. So we see over here, it is a common experience that if two bodies of different masses are moving with the same velocity and they are both brought to rest in same time, the force needed to stop the heavier body is more than the force required for the lighter body. Similarly, if two bodies of the same mass are moving with different velocities, then to stop them in the same time, the force needed for the faster moving body is more than the slower moving body. So you can see, if the masses are same and the velocities are different, then if I want to stop them in the same time, then the faster body will require more force, the slower body will require less force. If the masses are different but the velocities are same, then the heavier will take more time. If the time is the same, heavier takes more force and the lighter takes lesser force. So thus the force needed to stop a moving body in a definite time depends upon both on the mass of the body and the velocity with which it is traveling. Okay, so the force required to stop a moving body will be related to, or will be proportional to, or we can say it is dependent on both the mass and the velocity. Actually, the force needed to stop the moving body is given time depends on the product of the mass and velocity. So it is dependent on this into this. Mass into velocity is required. What is required will be the amount of force required will be the product of the mass and the velocity with which the body is traveling. So, and this is called as linear momentum. So linear momentum is equals to mass into velocity of the body in which it is traveling. So linear momentum is the product of mass and velocity. So that's why we define linear momentum of a body is the product of its mass and velocity. The linear momentum of a body is denoted by the letter small p. So small p is equals to mass into v. Okay, m into v. So that is alphabetically, if you if you are denoting this in terms of letters, then it will be p is equals to m into v. This is a vector quantity. It is a vector quantity because velocity is involved. So yes, direction will be involved. Hence it is a vector quantity. And if we see the SI units, it's the same thing. M is in kg and this is in meter per second. Hence it is momentum is given by kg meter per second. So it is kg meter per second is the SI unit of momentum. So momentum is mass into velocity and the SI unit is kg meter per second. In CGS unit, it will be gram centimeter per second. So that will be CGS unit and this is the SI unit. Now let's see the new thing, that is the change in the momentum. So here is one thing, mass. So we have one part over here, that the momentum P is equals to mass into velocity. If there is any change in the momentum, then that change in momentum can be given as delta P. That is change in momentum. This is change in momentum. So change in momentum is equals to change in mass and velocity, right? So this is nothing but change in m into v. But we very well know that whenever a body, can it ever happen that the mass of the body decreases when it is traveling? No. तुम कितना भी फास्ट भागो, कितना भी कुछ भी कर लो, you are not going to lose your mass as you are traveling. So normally, if you consider this thing, it will be much more ideal to say that this is not delta m into v. It could be the delta p is equals to m delta v, because whatever changes takes place in the momentum could be only due to the change in velocity. There could not be the change in the mass of a body when the body is moving. So when the body is moving, if I am saying that the velocity, the momentum is going to change, the momentum change in the momentum. So if I am saying that there is some kind of a change in the momentum, so I can very well understand that that change in momentum of the moving body could only be caused due to the velocity change. It cannot happen that a body's mass changes, because mass is an inherent property of the body. So body का mass कभी change नहीं हो सकता. So we see that change in momentum is delta p is equals to delta mv. Here delta is before the quantity, denotes the small change in the quantity. The change in product mv can be either due to the change in mass m, or due to change in velocity v, or due to change in both m and v. If mass remains constant, then change in the momentum is due to the change in velocity v alone. Then the equation will become delta p is equals to m delta v. So normally there is a very rare chances that the momentum of the body would change due to the change in the mass. So if we consider that the mass is going to remain constant, which is the normal condition, then delta p will be equal to m delta v. It is only in certain things, like in case of atomic structures and all, wherein it may happen that there could be a change in the mass. So that particular thing is, see, normally it doesn't happen that the mass changes, but if at all there is any energy releasing thing taking place, like in case of a radioactive substance, or in case of nuclear fusion or fission, so when such a thing may happen, there will be an energy generated due to the change in the mass. So if that would have been the condition, that there is a change in mass, then only we will be having delta p is equal to m delta v. But under the normal circumstances of your studies in the 9th standard, which is considered, then we will always consider that delta p is m delta v. Okay, we are not going to consider those examples wherein the change in the velocity, change in mass is probable. So in case of atomic particles moving with velocity comparable to the velocity of light, it is observed that the mass of the particle does not remain constant, but it increases with increase in the velocity according to the relationship which is given over here, where m0 is the mass of the particle which was at rest, and in case we cannot write, in that case we cannot write delta mv as m delta v. So what they mean to say is that this part such, for exam point of view, not at all important, but yes, for knowledge point of view, you can understand this way, that whenever any particle, now if you just want to elaborate this thing, it is this way, that there is something which is called as Einstein's formula, or that is E is equals to mc square. Now here E is equals to mc square, where m is the mass and c is the speed of light. So it is seen that when a particle, when an atom is moving at a speed of light, that means if it is traveling at a speed of something greater than 3 into 10 raised to 8 meter per second. So if that is the speed at which an atom is traveling, and that condition, there is a change in the mass taking place. Otherwise, if the speed is not up to the speed of light, which normally none of the particles will be having the speed of light, in such a condition, the mass is not going to change. So if there is no change in the mass of the object, then definitely delta P will be equal to m delta V. But if there is a change in the mass due to this particular reason, or when it is possible, when the velocity is greater than the speed of light or equal to the speed of light. So if such is the condition, yes, there is a possibility. Otherwise, there is no possibility that there could be the change in mass. Okay, so that's why the relationship delta P is equals to m delta V is true only if the velocity v of the moving body is much smaller than the velocity of light. That is, if the v over here is much smaller than c. C is the speed of light. If velocity is much smaller than speed of light, then it happens to be delta P is equal to m delta v. It happens when the velocity of particle is in the order of 10 raised to 6 meter per second or less than this, then the variation in the mass with velocity is small enough and the mass can be considered to be constant. However, the relationship delta P is equal to delta mv is always true whether mass varies or it remains constant. So yes, this formula is 100% true. There is no doubt in this thing. Right, irrespective of the velocity is more than or equal to speed of light or slightly less than speed of light, but this is 100% true. But normally for calculation purposes and for our normal general purposes, where the speed of the body is in the tune of 10 raised to 6 meter per second, in that case the mass which is going to be changed, the change in the mass due to this formula will be very less. And when there is a very less amount of change in the mass, we can consider it to be negligible. Hence, under normal circumstances, we will be using this formula, delta P is equal to m delta V. So now let's see what is the outcome of this particular thing. So we now have this particular formula that delta P is equals to m delta V. Delta P, change in momentum. So what is the rate of change of momentum? Rate of change of momentum is nothing but delta P upon T. So it will be rate of change will be equal to delta P upon T is equals to m delta V upon T, because we are dividing both the sides by T, because whatever is going to be the change over here in the same time period, this change is also going to take place. That's why we are dividing both the sides by T. Now what is delta V? Delta V is nothing but initial velocity minus final velocity. So we can say this delta P upon T is nothing but m into V minus U whole upon T. Got it? V is my final velocity, U is my initial velocity. So if there is a change in velocity, only then there is a change in momentum. If there is no change in velocity, there is no change in momentum. So change in momentum implies that there is a change in velocity. That means there was an initial velocity and final velocity. So initial velocity we take it as U, final velocity we take it as V, which is a general thing what we have taken in the equations of motion. So accordingly we see that delta P upon T is equals to m V minus U the whole upon T. What is V minus U upon T? Do you remember that? Acceleration, right? So acceleration, so we know that acceleration is V minus U upon T. So that's why delta P upon T is nothing but m into acceleration. So we can say rate of change of momentum. So we say rate of change of momentum is equals to mass into acceleration. Got it? Mass into acceleration gives us the rate of change of momentum. So the rate of change of momentum is nothing but m into a, or mass into acceleration. This relationship holds good only when the mass of the body remains constant. So we are taking this as the main assumption that the mass is not changing. We are talking only about those body which are not traveling at the speed of light, or which are traveling something less than 10⁶ meter per second speed. Okay. Now, what was the cause of the change in momentum? Think it over. There is a change in momentum. We understood that there is a change in momentum. Means there is a change in velocity. How did the change in velocity come into picture? Change in velocity हुआ कैसे? Because some force was applied. Right? A body is moving, suddenly its speed increases. How does its speed increase? Because some force was applied. Application of the force means it was traveling and I just pushed it further. तो push के कारण उसका speed बढ़ गया. So that means that the force is the very cause of the change in rate of change of momentum. Rate of change of momentum is caused due to the force. So what is that amount of force which is given to them? So we can say that the rate of change of momentum is caused due to the force, and it can be calculated as m into a. So this gives us the formula for force is equal to m into a. Right? But we will come to that a bit later on. We will just first of all find out something more about it and then we'll do it. So thus the force acts on a body, the rate of change in momentum of a body is equal to the product of the mass of the body and acceleration produced in it due to that force, provided that the mass of the body remains constant. So you can see they are given you that when a force acts on a body, the rate of change of momentum takes place due to the change in velocity, so which is equal to the mass into acceleration. So that's why if the body's mass remains constant, then it is m into a. Alternatively, for the body of a mass m moving with a velocity v, its linear momentum is p into v. In delta t, if its linear momentum changes by delta p by applying the force on it, then the rate of change of linear momentum will be equal to the same way, delta p upon delta t. So they are given the other method is that if there is we know that p is equal to m into v, and if there is a change in the momentum in a delta time, in a time period delta t, so that will be delta p upon delta t is equal to delta mv upon delta t. Okay, so we know delta v upon delta t is nothing but acceleration. Change in velocity upon time is nothing but acceleration. Hence we see delta p upon t is equal to delta t is equal to m into a. So same thing, nothing different, but only thing is that here we took it as v minus u, here we took directly. So nothing different as such, it's just they are given you in an alternative form. So this momentum is the main principle or the main physical quantity on which the second law of motion is dependent on. Okay, so the second law of motion, so Newton's first law of motion defines the force only qualitatively. A force changes the state of motion of body when it is applied on it. It means the force produces acceleration in the body, that is, force is the cause of acceleration. Now we shall see that the Newton's second law of motion gives the quantitative value of force, that is, it relates the force to the measurable quantity like acceleration and mass. So yes, as I told you earlier also, the first law gave you the quality of force. The concept of quality was the external cause. So that was the quality that was changing the tendency of inertia. Whereas now they are going to tell you the quantity of force, that is how the force is related to mass and acceleration. It is our common experience that we push a tennis ball gently, a small acceleration is produced and it acquires a small velocity in a certain time. But if the same tennis ball is pushed harder, a larger acceleration is produced in it and it acquires a larger velocity in the same time interval. Thus, the magnitude of two forces can be compared by measuring the acceleration produced by them when they are applied one by one on the same body. If the force F1 produces an acceleration 5 meter per second square and the force F2 produces an acceleration of 10 meter per second square on the same body, then the magnitude of force F2 is 2 times the magnitude F1. Experimentally, Newton found that the acceleration produced in the body is directly proportional to the force applied. So what he did? He took a ball. Okay, two balls, same size, same type, everything the same, mass the same. One, he hit a particular with a force, and it traveled at an acceleration of 5 meter per second square. Other one, he hit a bit harder and it traveled at acceleration of 10 meter per second square. So you can see that the lighter one was having a force F1, other one was F2, and the relationship between F1 and F2 because here it was 5 meter per second square and here 10 meter per second square. So the force applied in the second case was double than the first one. So accordingly we see that the force which is applied is causing the acceleration to take place. So experimentally we can say that the acceleration produced in the body is directly proportional to the force applied on it. Whatever acceleration is produced is due to the force applied on it. Since if we try to produce same change in velocity in the same time in a football or a tennis ball, initially both are rest, we need to apply a larger force on the football than in a tennis ball. The force needed to produce same acceleration in two bodies of different masses is not the same. So yeah, we had taken the same ball, but if this was one was a football and another was a tennis ball, in that case I will require more force in case of a football and lesser force in case of a tennis ball to have the same velocities or the same acceleration. So accordingly we will see that the force will be more for a heavier body and lesser for a lighter body. So thus the force needed to produce same acceleration in two bodies of different masses is not the same. It is more for a body of a larger mass, less for a body of smaller mass. If a force F is needed to produce an acceleration 5 meter per second in a body of mass 2 kg, then to produce the same acceleration in a body of mass 4 kg, the force needed is of double the magnitude, that is 2F. So that is the calculation they have given you, that if the mass is given to you as 2 kg and the acceleration is 5 meter per second square, then and if I want the same thing, the 2 kg ke badle 4 kg hai, then automatically for the same amount of acceleration, the force required will be twice. So experimentally Newton found that force needed to produce same acceleration in different bodies is proportional to their masses. So first he first of all concluded that same masses and different acceleration, double acceleration. So same masses, lesser force, lesser acceleration, more force, more acceleration. That means force is required force is directly proportional to the acceleration if the mass is the same. Similarly, if the acceleration is same, then the force required for a lighter body will be less and for a heavier body will be more. So mass and force are also directly proportional to each other. On the basis of this experiment, Newton concluded that the acceleration produced in the body of a given mass is directly proportional to the force applied on it. That means if I draw a particular graph, so now first thing what we get is that the force is directly proportional to the mass, or first of all is acceleration. So if I have got a particular graph like this, and where this is the acceleration and this is the force, then it will be a line like this, a linear graph like this, which will tell me that my ratio of force and the acceleration is always constant. That means for a given particular amount of the mass given constant mass, my force required will be directly proportional to the acceleration. Force increases, acceleration increases. Okay. Similarly, the next thing is that force is directly proportional to the mass. So if I got a graph like this, where this is the mass and this is the force, again it is like this, that if the force increases, it's ulta. So if the mass increases, the force required will also increase. So with the increase in the mass, there will be increase in the force required. Here with the increase in the force, there will be automatic increase in the acceleration. Hence combining the two, so this one and this one, if we combine the two, what do we get? We get over here as, we have over here, F is proportional to A, F is proportional to M, so F is proportional to M into A. Proportionality sign can be taken by a constant. We always know proportionality का तो क्या करते हैं? We take a multiplicative constant. So the multiplicative constant we take it as K. So it will be KMA. Now here it is such that the value of K is 1. Okay, here the units are such that the value of K is not some any random constant. It is 1. So K is equals to 1. Therefore F is equals to MA. Okay, so we see over here that on basis of this experiment, Newton concluded that acceleration produced in the body of given mass is directly proportional to the force applied to it. So A is proportional to F. A graph plotted on the acceleration against F force is straight line as shown. And the force needed to produce a given acceleration in a body is directly proportional to the mass of the body. That is, F is proportional to M. So a graph plotted with F against M is straight line as shown. So combining the two, F is equals to KMA. Here K is a constant, the unit of force is so chosen that K becomes 1. So when M is 1 and A is 1, thus the amount of force is taken as 1 unit of force, which when applied on a body of mass 1 unit mass produces a unit acceleration in the body. With the unit of force so chosen, we have F is equals to M into A, or force is equals to, so we have force is equals to mass into acceleration. Okay, so what is that? If a mass of 1 kg, okay, what is this particular thing over here? That 1 Newton force is a force which when acting on a body of mass 1 kg produces an acceleration of 1 meter per second square. Okay, what is 1 Newton? 1 Newton is when a mass of 1 kg is given a force of and then the body is traveling at an acceleration of 1 meter per second square, then that force which is applied was 1 Newton. So hence we see mathematically, this is mathematical expression of Newton's second law of motion. So it is given force. If a given force is applied on a bodies of different masses, the acceleration produced in them is inversely proportional to their masses. So A is inversely proportional to 1 upon M. So then it will be ulta. So if the mass is with the same force, if I am applying the same force on different masses, then what will happen? As the force increases, the mass will, or as the mass decreases, the force automatically will increase. Okay, or acceleration. So acceleration produced will be inversely proportional. So if my mass decreases, my acceleration increases, and if my mass decreases, my acceleration increases, mass increases, acceleration decreases. Okay, so acceleration and mass are inversely proportional to each other. So if I have a graph of mass versus acceleration, so if this is acceleration and this is mass, it will be a curve like this, that if the acceleration is more, then the mass is going to be less. When the mass is more, acceleration is going to be less. So we say that A is inversely proportional to the mass for the same force applied. Right, so that was the explanation about the formation here. So we have force is equals to mass into acceleration. This also gives us the unit of force. So the unit of force, we can take the unit of force in this way. It's very easy now. So we see the force is F is equals to m into a. M is measured in kg. This is measured in meter per second square. So therefore, this is force is measured in kg meter per second square, which is given a name as Newton. Okay, honoring the name of Sir Isaac Newton. The force is measured in Newton, written in the symbolic form as capital N, whereas it is small Newton in case of when written. So that's why we see that 1 Newton is equals to 1 kg into 1 meter per second square. So we can define 1 Newton as 1 Newton is a force which an act on a body of mass 1 kg produces an acceleration of 1 meter per second square in it. Okay, so this is the Newton, 1 kg per meter square. Similarly, if I take the CGS unit, then it is going to be 1 gram into 1 centimeter per second square, which is 1 dyne. So 1 dyne is going to be 1 gram into 1 centimeter square, and the relationship between dyne and Newton could be very easily known. This is 1 Newton, this is dyne, so we know that gram to kg, if I make it gram, will be 1000, and meter per second into centimeter will be 100. So that's why it is going to be, this will be gram per centimeter square. So 1 Newton is equal to 10 raised to 5 dyne. This is a conversion of SI unit to CGS system in case of force, right? So we got that force is equal to mass into acceleration. Okay. 26.